Okay, class, today we're going to be talking about money. So first off, money is an asset used as a means of payment. So there's different groups of assets that we can call money. It can be narrow or broadly. Currency deposits, checking deposits, debit card accounts, currency in circulation, those are all a narrow definition of money. Deposits of currency are excluded from this narrow definition, but we include them in the broader definition. So money is a liquid asset, and because of this liquidity, money earns little to no interest. Illiquid assets require substantial transaction costs. They generally earn high interest rates, though. So let's group some assets. The demarcation between the two is arbitrary. Currency in circulation, checking deposits, debit cards, savings deposits, time deposits are generally more liquid than bonds. Loans, deposits of currency in exchange markets, stocks, real estate, and other assets. So let's look at the money supply. The central bank controls the quantity of money that circulates. In the US, we call our central bank the Federal Reserve, and it directly regulates the amount of currency in circulation. Indirectly, it influences the amount of checking deposits, debit card accounts, and other monetary assets. So money demand represents the amount of monetary assets people are willing to hold. So what influences this? Economists use individual demand of money, and we use an aggregate demand of money. So the first thing that influences this is called interest rates or expected rates of returns. And these are relative to non-monetary assets, those illiquid assets. Another thing is risk. So the risk of holding monetary assets comes from unexpected inflation, but we also have other assets with risk, so it's not very important. Then we have liquidity. So what influences aggregate demand? Again, we have interest rates. Again, monetary assets pay little or no interest, so the interest rate on non-monetary assets like bonds, loans, and deposits is the opportunity cost. A higher interest rate means higher opportunity costs of holding monetary assets, which is a lower demand of money. Price is another influence in the demand of money. This is related to inflation and deflation. Another influence is income. If you have more income, you can buy more goods and services, and you need money to do that. So let's look at a model. We have MD equals P times L, which is a function of R and Y. So P is the price level, Y is national income, R is measure of interest rates on non-monetary assets, LR is an aggregate demand function of real monetary assets. Alternatively, we can move the P over to the other side. So the ratio of money demand with respect to prices equals the function of interest rates on non-monetary assets and real income. So here's what that looks like graphically. If it shifts to the right, it represents an increase in real income. And if it shifts to the left, it's a decrease. So let's look at a model of the money market. The money market is where money is lent and borrowed, generally at low interest rates or no interest rates. Domestic interest rates directly affect rates of return on domestic currency deposits in foreign exchange markets. So, with no shortages or surpluses, model achieves an equilibrium where money supply equals money demand. Alternatively, when the quantity of real monetary assets supplied matches the quantity of real monetary assets demanded, we also have the equilibrium, where monetary supply divided by prices equals that function of return and income. So when there's an excess supply of monetary assets, there's an excess demand for interest-bearing assets. So people with an excess supply of money are willing to offer or accept interest-bearing assets even at lower interest rates by giving up their money. Others are willing to hold additional monetary assets as interest rates. So when there's excess demand, there's an excess supply of interest-bearing assets like loans, bonds, and deposits. So here's what that looks like graphically. And here's what an effect of an increase in money supply on the interest rate looks like. You can see as money supply increases, the interest rate declines. So the effect of the interest rate of a rise in real income, you can see how the interest rate rises. So here's what simultaneous equilibrium looks like in the US money market and the foreign money market. And here's the linkage between the American system and the European system. And here's what a dollar-euro exchange rate effect looks like. So changes in the supply. Increase in money supply causes interest rates to fall, rates of return on domestic currency to fall, and domestic currency to depreciate. A decrease in country's money supply causes interest rates to rise, rates of return of domestic currency deposits to rise, and domestic currency to appreciate. So, how would a change in the supply of euros affect US money market? An increase in the supply of euros causes depreciation of the euro, which would be an appreciation of the dollar. A decrease in the supply of euros causes an appreciation of the euro or a depreciation of the dollar. And here's what that looks like graphically. So an increase in supply of euros reduces interest rates in the EU by reducing the expected rate of return on euros. This decrease in expected return causes the euro to depreciate. But we predict no change in the US money market due to change in the supply of euros. So let's look at the long run and the short run. In the short run, prices don't have sufficient time to adjust to market conditions. Up to this point, we've looked at short run analyses in our graphs. In the long run, we can have prices of factors of production and output have sufficient time to adjust. Wages adjust to supply and demand. Output and income are determined by the amount of workers and other factors of production. So real interest rates depend on the supply of saved funds and the demand of saved funds. In the long run, the quantity of money supplied is predicted not to influence the amount of output, which are real interest rates, and the aggregate demand function. However, the quantity of money supplied is predicted to make the level of average prices adjust proportionally in the long run. So in the long run, there's a direct relationship between the inflation rate and changes in the money supply. Here's what that looks like graphically. So we have excess demands of goods and services, inflationary expectations, Here's what the variability of dollar to yen exchange rate looks like. And on top of the graph is the Japan US price level ratio. Here's another graph that looks at the short run and the long run effects of an increase in the US money supply. So, a permanent increase in a country's money supply causes a proportional long run depreciation of its currency. So, here's what time paths of economic variables look like after permanent increase in the US money supply. So, exchange rate overshooting. The exchange rate is said to overshoot when its immediate response to a change is greater than its long run response. Overshooting is predicted to occur when monetary policy has an immediate effect on interest rates, but not on prices or inflation. This explains why exchange rates are so volatile.